You know, he's a big part of our team on both ends of the floor, and not having him out there on the floor, yes, we miss a lot, but, you know, now it gives the other guys an opportunity to step up. And, yeah, we're going to need Joey Baker as well as Isaiah Barnes. They're going to get opportunities. Yes, there are going to be times when we have bigger lineups. I have to, mix and match a little bit, but, hey, that's a part of it, huh? Part of the job. You just got to they're going to make me a better coach. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in on this Monday, the 23rd of January. I'm Dennis Fithian. Welcome to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football and basketball. That was Michigan basketball coach Juwan Howard on the Defend the Block pod yesterday, talking about his son, Jet, who injured his left ankle. We'll be talking about that coming up. It's great to be with you, as always. We're live weekdays here at 1 o'clock talking about the latest in Michigan sports. It's great to see everyone. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I watched a lot of football, and when I was last with you, I was getting ready to come on the show on Monday, and I had to make an emergency call to the vet to come out. I have two goats, and one of the goats had got into the compost bin and was eating a bunch of fermented apples. And, you always hear about goats, those goats can't eat anything. Not really. They can't eat, tons of fermented apples and squash. Apparently, it really screws up their pH or whatever. So I was, the vet came out. It was a long day Friday. And then Saturday, just talking goat stuff here for a second. Saturday, if I had to tell you honestly, it looked terrible for my goat. It looked like the goat was not going to make it. She looked, oh man, she just looked terrible. And I almost thought like, oh, just, for your own good, but the good news is that she's totally rebounded. She looks great. We've had to administer a bunch of different shots and different things, and she looks good. She looks like she's going to pull through it. So thanks for all the well wishes when it comes down to Penelope, my goat. She looks like she's going to hang in there and pull through this after it looked really dicey over the weekend. So there's your goat update, whether you wanted it or not. We're not going to be talking any more goats unless you want to put Jet Howard, Jim Harbaugh into the goat category. And hey, I think you could. You heard Juwan talking there at the beginning about life possibly without Jet. We'll get to that, and Michigan topping Minnesota, and the possibility without being with being without their top freshman scorer, their second leading scorer on the team. We'll get to that coming up. I just ask you the question straight up. I'm going to answer this one myself. How happy you are with Jim Harbaugh? Just how happy are you with the head coach at Michigan? When I say it, sounds like a funny question. It's like, we're ecstatic, with Jim Harbaugh. But that might not be the answer for everybody. Just coming off everything, maybe, you're feeling that, that everything now that was has been talked about for, the last, 24 days or something. You're in a great state of mind. Everything's positive. Look, I saw Jim Harbaugh yesterday on TV at the basketball game. Looked like he was having a great time, eating a hamburger, and it looked like he was eating a hamburger and with some fries, and so maybe it's just all good now. We're moving on, and so we'll discuss that coming up. We start with Michigan looking for the possibility of a head coach. I'm sorry, the head coach looking for a quarterback coach and potentially an offensive coordinator with Matt Weiss being sent on his way on Friday because of the cyber crime or whatever he was into. We'll find out about that. I'll have a little bit to say about that situation. And still, we know that Matt Weiss isn't coaching anymore with Michigan. Exactly what Matt Weiss did, we don't know how that'll affect the football team. I think a lot of people are like, hey, Matt Weiss, let's get the next coach in here. We're fine. Maybe that's going to be the best case scenario right now. We'll see. Maybe it is that. But we do, look back. At least I'll look back here for a second and think about Matt Weiss as a coach. He was 2 years ago, comes out of the Ravens system, first a quarterback coach working with Kate McNamara, and then, J.J. McCarthy as well. And then this year, J.J. McCarthy as the starter. He was still the quarterback coach. So 2 years as the quarterback coach, winning the Big Ten. I mean, that's he did a nice job just when you look at it from that standpoint. Both, the quarterbacks and what they went through and how they played and how they progressed. I mean, he had a hand in it one way or the other. So he did a nice job. And so he's got that going for him. Things that people had said about Matt Weiss, I don't know for sure, but when you hear people talk about Matt Weiss, they said, hey, he was very good analytically. He really looked and looked at the numbers and brought that to the position and to the table and all those sort of things. So he was good that way. How was he as an offensive coordinator this year, as a co-offensive coordinator? A lot of people are like, he was the offensive coordinator, or, how did it all work? We go back to that situation again, because it was Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss. And could they really have split up the play calling duties like it says in the title, or, however that works? So you don't exactly know, who was making the calls. I think what you hope right now is that, hey, Sharon was calling the plays in the second half, Matt was calling them in the first, and then, Weiss mostly was calling him for the entire game against TCU. I don't know. So that would be a funny thing maybe that you would think, and hopefully that would be the case. Nobody, when they talked about Matt Weiss, was saying, oh, this guy's just a super recruiter. In fact, nobody said that. So as far as his loss on the field and, how can they replace him and all that, he's did a nice job. But the recruiting part of it, nobody was talking about, him being some masterful recruiter. And maybe that was something he could have been better at. I'm sure when you come from the pros and then you're down to college, you're making the calls and you are, you're learning how to, I don't know if you just automatically, become a great recruiter. You always hear about, well, what's it take? Well, relationships. Well, what makes anybody, good at their job if it's coming down where you have to have, conversations with people, kids, and, this case, being able to make those connections. I think you could get better at that. So he could have, but the recruiting part may be the easiest out of all of the stuff that the job demands to be able to bring somebody in. In that case, I've got a bunch of names that at least that I've been hearing, and I'll put those out. It's not like some definitive list, but it's my list, and I put it together, and we'll see what everybody's thinking about that. Thanks for the well wishes again for my goat. Mark is saying this upcoming season is going to be insane. A national championship coming to Ann Arbor. It's preordained. Well, that would be nice. I mean, I could take it, but I think the part, and this gets to what we're going to talk about coming up, how happy you are with Jim Harbaugh. You're pretty happy, just pausing, even when you might not have been last week or the week before with, the NFL stuff or any of the stuff. Maybe you can sit here and name a bunch of things, but where you're at right now, where the team, what they did this year, and how they look for next year, things look really good. So I know where you're at, Mark. You know what I'm saying? We got that goat talk. Who knew that we were going to be getting to that? Let's see. Antoine. And I'm glad Antoine's back. Antoine was missing after the TCU game for a while, but he was working. But now he's back off the road or whatever. And, he's talking about goat cheese. I'm not sure, Antoine. Our goats, they're just pets. A lot of people, they get goats for they get them and they breed them, and I think part of that is when you get the goat milk and goat cheese and goat soap and everything. I think that's how you do it. And then there's other reasons that people get them, which are not the kind that I would talk about. But ours are just pets. That's all we have them for. We let them walk around and, graze in the on Peach Mountain out here. And and that's it. So, I mean, they're nice, but they're not bringing any of that cheese to the table. Antoine making those jokes about the burgers, and we're gonna get to that coming up. That's like how you feel about Harbaugh. I see Michigan fans of like any of the matters with the NCAA, they've just chalked it up to it's burgers. It's nothing. Everybody else is doing stuff wrong. Michigan, it's just burgers. But it's fine. I mean, the Michigan fans. Antoine is when it comes to Matt Weiss says it might be a blessing in disguise. Said he wasn't too pleased with the passing game. It might be. Like, look, there is a tendency. I have it myself, and I think it's with any fan base where look at this is Jim Harbaugh's program. So anybody that leaves, even if you like their contributions or anything else, they're with the team, but you're either with the team or you're not. And when you're not, it's kind of like, yeah, can they be replaced? Sure. And like everybody's replaceable. Heck, even the head coaches, but the head coaches, like it's all about the head coach. And then everybody else, I mean, it's a team and they got to do this. But when they're on their way out, it's kind of like, all right, fine. Now, I don't, like when you are out like Weiss, I mean, like, who knows what that situation is going to be. But I think just like Antoine saying, it could be a blessing in disguise. Mark saying it doesn't feel like it was a huge loss. Am I crazy? I don't know. Like, I think what you would have to do, and I don't know if you'd get the correct answer or not, or even a good feel for it, is ask Kate McNamara. Ask JJ McCarthy what they really thought. Now, a lot of times, like if I had a chance to talk to JJ McCarthy, I'd say, "Hey, JJ, what did you think of Matt Weiss? We had a great 2 years. I learned an awful lot from Coach. Coach taught me this, and he might be saying exactly how he feels, but to get that real answer, I don't know if we really get that answer. We know what we saw out on the field, and so if I'm not going to say that it's not a big loss. He had a hand. He was the quarterback coach, and he was the offensive coordinator. The whole thing with the offensive coordinators, we don't really know who called the plays. Like if it was Matt Weiss's idea, his baby, to call the Philly special, like Harbaugh said, okay, here, Sharon, what's your idea? Some things that we can work on during bowl prep. And Sharon's was like, I really like the flea flicker, comes to Harbaugh. Is like, I really like, this situation. Let's put that into play. And then Weiss's was, I really like the Philly special. And then we saw flea flicker worked great. And then, not so much with the Philly special, that would be more, I don't think we'll end up knowing that. I know some drama folks would be like, well, I've been told that, but maybe they're right. But I don't know for sure. When it comes down, I always like this is when we start going through, get the Chargers head coach for OC. Are you talking about Brandon Staley? The Chargers head coach is a defensive guy. So, it's great to put names up there, but no, he would not be somebody for the OC or quarterback coach. Here are some of the names that have been bantied about. Greg Roman, who just stepped down recently from the Ravens, and that's where Weiss came from. We know McDonald, like you go down the list with Michigan and what they've been able to do. Jesse Minter spent some time there. So the Ravens pipeline, it's not one that completely should be dismissed. I know a lot of Michigan fans and everyone, unless you're coming off like some championship or like if Lamar Jackson had run for, 5,000 yards and they were in position to win the Super Bowl, people are like, yeah, Greg Roman's great. But, it wasn't all that great this year. So people are a little bit down on Greg Roman. Dan Mullen, for a while, was a shooting star in college football, Mississippi State. Then he went to Florida and he, bombed out with the Gators. He's on TV right now, but as an offensive mind, it's a big name. People like big names. I like big names. You like big names. Dan Mullen is a big name, so I, put it up there. Brian Greasy is a big name. Won the last Michigan championship. He was the quarterback of the team. I saw him yesterday when Brock Purdy of the 49ers was throwing the ball out of bounds with like exactly 1 second, and the 49ers were able to come out there and kick a field goal. They're like, whoa, this is crazy. Look at Brock Purdy. And then he was standing over there by Brian Greasy, who was, like, hey, we said, like, let's get rid of it a little bit quicker. But Brian Greasy right now with the 49ers into the NFC Championship game, tutoring the last player drafted, Mr. Irrelevant for the 49ers. And he hasn't lost a game yet. Sure. Kyle Shanahan, gets a lot of is going to get a lot of the props for that and how they've dealt with Purdy. So too is Greasy, and he would be somebody to look at. It should be noted in 2020 that Greasy took a screenshot of how Harbaugh had done against teams on the how he had done against Ohio State, 0-5, and his record against top 25 teams, some other things, and he had put at the top of that before he tweeted it, enough is enough. Like, time to move on from Jim Harbaugh. Now you could think like, oh, Jim Harbaugh hates Brian Greasy. He wanted Jim Harbaugh to get fired back in 2020, which may be exactly the case, but is that going to preclude Harbaugh from going after Brian Greasy? I shrugged my shoulders because back when Mike Hart was playing at Michigan and Jim Harbaugh had something going on at Stanford, he kind of took I don't know exactly, veiled shot, or he was talking about the academics at Michigan compared to Stanford. And Mike Hart was like, basically told Jim Harbaugh to go to hell, basically. And, this is Michigan. You're not a Michigan man, that kind of stuff. That played out. And look at where Mike Hart is now. So they were able to bury the hatchet that way. Mike Hart was, along with Jim Harbaugh. So who's, if Greasy would be interested, it's still a possibility. Most people don't like David Shaw. I had him down as one of the coaches that would be, I would have called one of the top 5 coaches to be the next Michigan football coach if Jim Harbaugh would have moved on. I got a couple emails about that. I'm stupid. That's the worst hire you could possibly make. The people didn't sound like they were all that excited about having that particular interview. And also the relationship, somebody said the relationship between Harbaugh and Shaw isn't there. I put him on the list anyways. As I did, I didn't put Tom Brady, which his name comes up all the time, because I think there's a 0% chance of Tom Brady. Some of these guys, there's not a very good chance at all, but maybe a chance. Like Cliff Kingsbury, I put his name on there. I don't think there's much of a chance. I think Kingsbury, who was head coach of Arizona and was put on his way and is now like having fun in Thailand. I think Kingsbury could be a head coach in a number of different places in college. I don't know if he would be getting a prime job, but I think he could get a job as a head coach in college. And I think he could be an offensive coordinator somewhere in the pros. Would he want to be a quarterback coach? Or you want to turn the offense over to Kingsbury? I mean, that sounds it sounds a little wild, but I just put him up there because his name, people talk about that. I think they're doing it just to be funny, and maybe that's why I'm putting it up there. Kirk Campbell, his name is on the bottom of this list. You probably are familiar with all the other guys, but not Campbell. He's actually with Michigan as an offensive analyst. And would you like Kirk Campbell? He's somebody that you would promote within. There's always a bit of an attractiveness to that. He was at Old Dominion. He was at Penn State as an analyst. I think Josh Gaddis brought him along, or at least helped with his trip to Ann Arbor. And, as soon as you say Josh Gaddis' name, people are like, oh, no. But I don't. It doesn't mean that's not a negative thing to me at all. But, Campbell as the quarterback coach, I think the important thing here is, Jim Harbaugh, what he thinks of Campbell as a, quarterback coach. But what does J.J. McCarthy think as Kirk Campbell as his quarterback coach? He's his analyst, so he's somewhat as of a coach right now. He's got a pretty good idea. I'm sure that conversation is taking place. Harbaugh, JJ, what do you think of this guy? If JJ's like, dude, this guy's the man. He was the one that told. I think if you see Campbell, you're going to get the blessing of JJ McCarthy. Like Jim Harbaugh, if he says, look, we're looking for a quarterback coach. You're our quarterback. You talk in plain terms to JJ McCarthy. Like, JJ, you are our quarterback. What do you think about the next quarterback coach or next offensive coordinator? You're going to ask that question if you're Jim Harbaugh. And if he said, man, I really like this guy, I'm not sure he's ready, or maybe, he's got another idea of somebody else. That's going to be my number one thing. What's JJ think of Campbell? And I'll go from there. AJ says he likes Sharon Moore. He should be the head coach, but we need to evolve that passing game a little bit more to match up the running game a little bit more with the passing if needed. Yeah, I think that they want to do that as well. I think, AJ, that's what they want to do. And just because, like, I think there's also a thought, like, you could just elevate Campbell as the quarterback coach, and then you could bump Mike Hart up and have him as a co-offensive coordinator along with Sharon Moore. And if you're like, wait, Sharon Moore, isn't he kind of the running guy? And that's what Mike Hart is. Just because you were an offensive lineman and you were a running back, sure, like, you're going to know best about those, and people are always going to ask you about those, and, you're going to coach that position and everything else. But, you're also, you can, want to throw the football, if you're a running back or an offensive lineman. It doesn't mean you just want to ground and pound that way. So, that could be, considering that Harbaugh did that. Maybe he goes a year. If I had to guess, Campbell, if he stayed that way, just go a year with Sharon Moore, see how he does. Should be all right. Let's see what some others think about the OC. Mark says, as long as the new OC isn't exclusively Harbaugh, and as long as the new OC does not come out of West Virginia or any of its bordering states, he's just fine with that. Well, I know that's like a shot at Rich Rodriguez. Actually, Rich Rodriguez was a good offensive coordinator. He wasn't a good head coach. Like, he ignored the defense and special teams, and he didn't know how to talk about Michigan. He didn't know rivalry. Hell, we got rivalries in West Virginia. Like, okay, Jim, Rich, say you like the storied tradition of the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. We don't need to hear too much about the backyard brawl and that kind of stuff. Antoine talking about a BYU offensive coordinator. Here's a count 22. Maybe this is the phrase of the day. Not a surprise when it comes to Michigan fans. A blessing in disguise with Matt Weiss moving on. Let's see, Shane. Oh, Shane. Arch Manning, a $280,000 recruiting trip. Jack Harbaugh, a burger, $13. Blank you, NCAA. That fits like right in. I think that's where Michigan fans are at. Hey, we break little bit rules. There's fat rules. We break little rules. Other people break big rules. I hear you, what you're talking about there. Ooh, here's I like some left field ones. I didn't think of this one right here. This guy is somebody that I like. Steve says, how about Devin Gardner for quarterback coach? Would love to see Greasy, but don't see him with Harbaugh. Ooh, Devin Gardner. One thing you get on TV, and that's what Devin Gardner. He's gone into the media. He did he was the analyst for the Lions in the preseason. You see him. I've seen him on the rally. He works for Fox. And so you get to see his personality a little bit. A couple of years ago, I went out. A friend of mine was like, we're going downtown to a brewery, and Devin Gardner is going to be, talking about a football game. And, I went there and I was like, all right, let's check it out. Let's see. and Gardner was phenomenal, man. He was up at the TV, he was talking about this play and that play and the way he did it. I was just like, man, this guy's awesome. And he was very personable. I love Devin Gardner. So, Steve, you saying Gardner is not somebody that I thought about, but as a quarterback coach, they could do worse than Devin Gardner. And, Devin Gardner seems like he would be a really good recruiter. Why? He's got a little spark, to him. Got a charisma. I'd say that seems like that would connect with kids in high school. So I like it, Steve. I'm with it. DG. Mark is saying, I think the only reason Harbaugh is on the radar is because he felt the same way and probably said as much. Good for him. Or people, given the, this is the way they do it in England, giving this to the NCAA. People like that. Whose idea was the pet goat? It was collaborative. It was, to tell you the truth, we moved out. My wife is from Dexter, but we moved out. I moved out here, I don't know, 10 years ago, and we were in a fabulous place. It was just beautiful, but a little bit too big. And then we moved to another place, kind of in the woods. And we've got a beautiful a German Shepherd, Husky, Malamute mix. But in the woods out here, you find some ticks. Bottom line is, and instead of some of the options to get rid of ticks are like, burn the ground, get them tick collars or sprays and all those things, which we ended up having to do. But somebody suggested, hey, get goats and get chickens, and the goats will like clear all the underbrush and everything else. And then you just let the chickens go around and they peck up. Guess what? Chickens like ticks. And that was going to be the idea. So we first got the goats. And we should have got the chickens knowing how much eggs cost and everything, but we just went with the goats. And, we didn't get the chickens, to be honest, right off the bat, because there's so many hawks that fly around. And we thought our daughter would be upset. I think maybe we would have been upset too if these chickens were going to be getting picked off, by these hawks. So we never got to the chicken and hawk scenario, but we did go with the goats. And that's where it started, and that's where it's at. Now, if you were out here and saw the lay of the land out here at the Peach Mountain, you would say, that looks like a really good spot. It's a goat haven, actually. It looks, it couldn't be any perfect for a goat. There's Treppa. It's always good to see Treppa. Michigan players were calling Matt Weiss a genius. High praise from those who matter the most. Tripper, let's give you a little star there. I kind of like that one. Account 22 is not feeling it. Again, that's like kind of the Michigan fan manifesto. He's with us. Great. He's not so great. That's kind of in general. Like, I don't know. There's nothing to get account 22. He's like he kind of wrote the Michigan manifesto on how people feel about it. Philly Special was a horrible play call, but it does not define a person's career. Had it worked, whomever called it would have been a hero. We lost that game 20 different ways. Well, it always comes back to the chicken or the egg, doesn't it, Mark, when it comes down to play calls? If you just slam it through the middle like everybody's saying, and the line is right there and they stop you short, you say, you know what, damn it, everybody knew Michigan was just going to run up the middle. How about trying something else? The thing about the Philly Special is, and I'm not the X and O maven or anything, but you don't run it into a zone defense, and that's what happened. So they didn't get the right check or whatever. Like, they put somebody in motion. You should be able to figure out if a team's in a zone or a man. They should have audibled out of that. Maybe that was on JJ. Maybe they had to play, and it works great against man-to-man. It's like taking candy from a baby, but you've got to get the audible in there if they're in a zone, and maybe JJ didn't read it right. So I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. Harbaugh ultimately took the blame for that. And so you have two offensive coordinators. You don't know who actually, fought that one up. And then they may have been like, yeah, we know that we didn't want to run it into the zone, but JJ didn't get the check. So I don't know. The one thing, I haven't gone back to watch the game. Maybe I never will, but maybe I'll go back and watch it. It seemed like the receivers, maybe even on that first series, didn't they get flagged for, one of them wasn't on the line? They seemed like they were having some communication issues. It just I think they seemed a bit off. And maybe that had something to do with the Philly special. I don't know. We know that it didn't work. Look, the part about the trick plays and everything else, you're right. Sometimes you're a hero, sometimes you're not. But when you have played football a certain way the entire year and you have the upper hand, I think not fooling around in that situation, well, it's easy to say now. It's easy to say now. I didn't necessarily want to go slamming it up the middle, but I like, how about an option with JJ rolling out and having the opportunity to run it in or throw it, a little pass run option. They need to work on their short yardage situations. They need to work on their 2-point conversions. They need to work on their goal line offense. Out of all the things, and I liked a lot, I mean, almost everything from Michigan. I know, AJ was talking about just the passing game more. Yeah, have it look more like it did against Ohio State. I think they should throw the football more, even though they've got these two great backs. I mean, marrying that up where you can just make it, you can attack and just look like you're the best. What we're talking about is fine-tuning things, because I think Michigan's very good right now. The offense was excellent, but I'm talking about taking it to the next level. And the next level is like, being the best team in the country and winning it all. That's where they're at right now. Those are some of the fine-tuning things that I think they need to do. But I bet they won't run a Philly special down at the goal line anymore. Certainly next year they won't. Like, I would have been in favor of them running a jump pass either. A lot of people feel like AJ here, who says we don't need the Ravens offensive coordinator. Their offense is built on running. Harbaugh would say, yeah, that's why we're bringing him in. Hey, AJ, you want more passing. So do I. I want more passing too. Here's the counter. Andres, Michigan is built on running. Let's just go back. We don't want an offensive coordinator whose offense is built on running. Michigan is built on running. We don't want to run the ball so much more. We want to start passing. Michigan's built on running. We could do this all day. That's where it's at. Andres, nice work. How about putting the two together? There is a, I say happy, that sounds really easy. It's got to be a happy medium when it comes down to running the football as much as Michigan is and being able to also attack in the passing game. Let's do it. Got some guys that want to be offensive coordinator. I think that's what it comes down to when we're there, right? Trying to move on. We got more names. A lot of people throwing. There's a Peyton Manning one. Greasy. Come on. I like to get all of the feedback up here. Devin was a horrible quarterback at Michigan. Yeah, Scott, I don't really agree with that. I think that he was at the wrong time. Like, they had him as a wide receiver, and then they had him as a quarterback. Then they had Shoelace and all of that. Look, they didn't ever have a great team around him, really. But Devin played a great game in the second night game against Notre Dame. Everything that he could be, he was. He fumbled in that game once, but everything else, like, he was great. And you saw it. I think that was the first game he wore Tom Harmon's number. So old 98. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think so. And he was fabulous. And just because, and I'm not saying, like I said, I just gave you my thoughts on him at Michigan. Just because you weren't like the greatest QB when you played, what you find is some of those guys make the best coaches. I think Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, I mean, those guys played. I think Kirby might have been first team, all SEC as a DB when he played, but he's not like he was the greatest player of all time. Those guys are great coaches. The Red Wings had a coach one time named Scotty Bowman. He wasn't the greatest player. He was the greatest hockey coach of all time. It happens. Well, sometimes it works out that way. Phil Jackson was a pretty good player. Steve Kerr, and those guys are good in the NBA. What did Bill Belichick do in his NFL career, college career? Anything to write home about? We could play that game all day long. Somebody else that likes the Gardner pick. They could do worse for sure. Okay. We want to get to some other things. I'm asking you the question, how happy you are with Harbaugh. That's kind of the theme here today. The basketball team, we're going to get to that straight ahead. I do want to tell everybody that if you want to be in tune with everything that's going on with Michigan, like who is going to be the next offensive coordinator? Who are the candidates? How did this recruiting weekend go? What is Michigan doing with the quarterback position of the future? Is Michigan going to be able to land Jaden Davis? What's the latest? You know who's working on that right now? Josh Henschke, the publisher of the Maize and Blue Review. Wouldn't surprise me if he had a post up there right now talking about Jaden Davis and what's going on there. Go to michigan.rivals.com and join up. And then if you like talking about Michigan all day and all night, you go to the posting board, the Den, and that's what everybody's doing there. They're talking about Michigan all day and all night. It could be done, and it is being done. Yesterday, the basketball team hit the floor, a matinee, midday matinee against Minnesota, got behind 10-2, 16-6. It was like, oh no, it's a 12.5-point favorite with the worst team of the Big Ten. But they ended up tying the game at the half. And right before the half, Jett Howard injured his left ankle, could not put any weight on it, had to be helped off the floor, did not return. Michigan held on, won the game by 4 points, a much needed win, even though it got hairy in a couple different spots in the second half. Ultimately, they won that game. But now you have to think about Michigan without Jett Howard. There was a lot of talk about changing up the lineup. And before Jett got hurt, try Will Cheddar, try Terrace Reed Jr., try anybody. I don't know, maybe Baker, but get Joey Buckets in the starting lineup. And it's fair to, when you are a fan of a basketball team and you don't think that they are playing their best ball, or you think they're underachieving, you know what the first thing you do? You look at the lineups and you talk about changing them. You know what I do in baseball with the Tigers when they're off to a slow start or not? I talk about changing up the lineup. And so there have been a lot of ideas about what Juwan Howard should do with the lineup. Now he could be forced into making a change. If I had to guess, he would put Will Cheddar in the starting lineup for Jett Howard. See if he can provide some offense. This is the thing that Jett Howard is going to be missed for the most: offense, scoring, outside shooting. Michigan could go to Terrace Reed Jr., giving them a bigger lineup, and he's going to get some more play, but he's not bringing you that offense. Cheddar, I think, will be the guy. And if it's not going to be Cheddar, then you're looking at Joey Buckets. But Baker had his worst game in the Maize and Blue, so I wouldn't actually pick him. I would pick Isaiah Barnes even before him. But I think it's Cheddar is the obvious choice here by I think this is going to be forced to do that. And it would be interesting to see what Jet's ankle feels like today, because even though he had to be helped off the floor yesterday, we've seen this with ankle injuries before. Sometimes you go out and it looks terrible, then the next day it's not all that bad. But if we had to just guess right now, it is a guess, then he would not be available for Purdue coming up this Thursday. And that hurts. A team that is struggling offensively, struggling defensively too, but offensively, not having your top outside threat against Purdue who comes in, that's going to be tough. And then these upcoming games, you start thinking about a 2-week absence, the potential for that. That's a long time. That almost sounds like a death knell, but at Penn State, at Northwestern, Ohio State, Nebraska, there's a lot of wins in here that they're going to have if they want to be in the tourney. Let's be honest. That's what you want. And Michigan did beat Purdue last year at home. They need something like that. That was their best home win. I know they beat Michigan State last year at home, but beating Purdue was ranked 3rd last year. That was big for Michigan. Their biggest wins last year, their biggest win was against Tennessee in the tournament to get to the Sweet 16. Remember, Tennessee was the 3 seed. I would put their second biggest win as beating, who did they play? Colorado State in the opening round. NCAA tournaments, everything. Those were their top 2 wins. But, winning at Iowa, Ohio State at the end of the year, Indiana, they won some road games. They're going to have to do that this year. So that's where I'm at with basketball and how things are going. We do have some more feedback here. Jason's talking about Dan Mullen. Mullen has coached some good QBs. Take him out of the broadcast booth. He's the biggest name, Jason, that I think out of the whole thing. Gracie's a pretty big name, but those that might be just joining us, thinking about the different players or different coaches that Harbaugh could add. Mullen is a pretty big name. I don't know. Kingsbury's a pretty big name too. Dave, we were just, going across the country looking at all kinds of different guys. And let's look at some other ones. People talking about other shows. I said, hey, I'm not going to do that. What the hell? Let's do it. Hit that like button if you're a Michigan fan and if you hate Valente and Enrico. Well, okay. Yeah. Oh, those guys have not only do those guys have a show, those guys are making money hand over fist. So they're doing a pretty good job that way. Let's see what Matt has to say. Dennis, in my 40 years plus of supporting and watching Michigan, if we could get rid of most of the media, I'd like you to stay. There's a few other podcasts, but most of them, bye-bye. Well, Matt, let's we'll explore that. This is kind of the thing where it's coming up next anyways. And let's get that. But I like this. And he said, what about Nick Sheridan? The former Michigan QB, his dad, Bill Sheridan, longtime coach. Nick, that's not a bad one. That's one to keep in mind, right? So I'm with you on that. The question, and Matt's talking about, let's just get rid of some of the media and how happy are you with Harbaugh? I didn't come on Friday because I had the emergency with my goat, but Antoine actually was in the comments and he was saying, let's be positive about Michigan. Let's be positive. There's too much negativity out there in the media, especially when it comes to Michigan. And he was like, a lot of these podcasts are doing things for hits. And, somebody mentioned, Valente show. And, the people that are doing like podcasts like this and that are on the radio, they're trying to get the most people to listen and to tune in. So yeah, clicks and that's how you make money. Like if you just sit here and said, let's just all do positive things, I don't like that could be an approach that you might want to have, Matt. And that's the thing, like, and that's a fine approach. Like, let's just deal with the positive things. And that's what Antoine was saying. He just wants positive news. And it's just, when I ask you the question, how happy you are with Harbaugh, I know everybody that watches this show bleeds maize and blue. And I know that when it comes to some of these thorny issues, you're just ready to move on. You just want to hear, like, Michigan. Let's just talk about the good things with Michigan. There's plenty of bad things. I get all of that. I've tried to do the show, like, I think I wake up every day and think, what do I think about Michigan football? How am I feeling about Michigan football? Right now, I'm feeling pretty good. This season was excellent. The year before was excellent. Next year looks really good. That should be the basis of what everybody. I mean, like, if you're talking about Michigan, things are looking really good. So you don't forget that. Things are looking really good for Michigan, and that's where Harbaugh, comes in there. Harbaugh is the best coach of the Big Ten, and he's a top 5 coach in college football. So with all of things, and it's not for the faint of heart. Just think about the last 24 days of the roller coaster that Harbaugh's had you on. Like, that includes the semifinal, the possibilities of the NFL, of interviewing with them, the NCAA infractions, violations piece that we've mentioned here, the cyber crime by the OC. I mean, these are things that just happened here since New Year's Eve. So, I'm like, if you just took the approach, like, I'm just going to be happy about everything with Michigan and just be positive, it's like, how could you even talk about any of these things? Now, I've seen how it's developed, like the NFL possibility. It was only last week I was like, I didn't like that myself, so I just gave my opinion. I'm not going to sit here every day of every week saying, Harbaugh, he really kicked it when it came down to that contract. As it was going on in real time, I criticized his agent and ultimately Jim Harbaugh. I don't think they did a good job. There was a lot of angles that Harbaugh's agent could have played before interviewing with the Broncos and then hurting his reputation. It was a bad move by those guys. I know that. Let the media do your bidding. He should be criticized for that. If I don't see people, or if you don't see people out there that cover Michigan that looked at Jim Harbaugh interviewing for the Broncos and having an agent and all the different things that he could have done, and then going right to that was stupid. Let's call it like it is. Now, people want to say, well, he didn't really interview, or he did it because he had to do. Yeah, he could have done all these other things before he ultimately did that. So I'm critical of that. Is it the worst thing in the world? We'll see. Maybe it's not going to be for these. I don't like it because I think he looks like a liar in a lot of people's minds, and it will be used against him. But let's see. Maybe these recruits are going to be like, Jim Harbaugh's just out there playing ball. He's out there playing hardball. Harbaugh is playing hardball to get what he wants. And you know what? Maybe you guys will be justified. Like, Harbaugh he has to play hardball with this administration and what's going on with college football. That's why he needed to tell the NCAA where to stick it. And look, Harbaugh might be just the guy for all of that. He got a couple irons in the fire over here. He's telling the NCAA where to go, and maybe all of that. I didn't really like the NCAA piece to it either, but hey, let's see how it plays out. Well, look, again, we're Michigan fans, like, talking about it. And every day you don't want to be hit over the head with, well, it really wasn't about a cheeseburger. It was about illegal contact, text, Zooms, and coaching when you weren't supposed to. Small potatoes. What about these teams that are paying millions of dollars? Well, that's it. Screw the NCAA. So rationalize it any way you want, but but I think ultimately, you are happy with Harbaugh, and you got to deal with all this stuff that's going to go on. And because of the last 2 years and what looks ahead, you're in. Like you say, are you in or you out? You with us or you against us? You're with them. You're feeling pretty good about it. So that's the way I'm feeling about it. Let's see where the people are at when it comes down to it. Josh asking a question about Hunter Dickinson and why has he not been elite? He should be the best player on the court most nights. Yeah, some players, and it's hard to be a center and make all the players around you better. It's easier for a point guard, shooting guard, like they're able to get people involved. But Hunter needs his teammates to get him the ball. Hunter also needs his teammates to be able to knock down shots so they can't double and triple team him. He also needs not to just stand down on the block the whole time because it gets stale. And I think other teams have figured him out that way. I think he also needs to get a little bit stronger with the ball. But I really think it's the players around him that have dragged him down the last 2 years. He was great as a freshman. He had 4 guys constantly around him when he passed it out. They could knock down a 3. And so when you got the ball on the string and other guys are knocking down shots, and then once in a while you go down, get it to the big fella, he's going to go down and he's going to dunk it on you. But last year when you were throwing it out to Caleb Houston and he couldn't knock one down to save his life, and some other guys as well, it wasn't so hot. And this year it's kind of the same thing. When you don't have guys that can shoot around you, you're the big man. I think that's the reason that he has not been elite. Scott says, does anybody think the basketball team can get it together and still make the tournament? I think they can. Now, if you're asking me if I think they will, if I had to predict that right now, I don't like being negative. We've already established that. But I do think that they can get it together, yes. Matt is saying that most media makes nothing into something. Well, sure. And the one thing about media, and especially nowadays, is that they need things to talk about. Like, in Michigan is giving somebody, people to talk about constant, things to talk about all the time. And so there's that. A lot of people mentioned Mike. Oh, you got a 4-hour show. You got to fill 4 hours. You start talking about other things and then nobody's calling. But, and when you do a talk show, when I did a talk show, there were 10 phone lines on this phone bank. And I'd always come in like, let's talk about, the 4 teams in Detroit, Michigan State, football and basketball. That's the majority of what people are going to talk about. Football games over the weekend, all the different angles, sports, all this, different angles, positivity, everything else. And then you would get to something and you'd say, and Jim Harbaugh needs to do a better job in reining his team in or something. And you look down, 10 people call. You talk about what people want to hear and what people call it about. Hunter was the best player on the court yesterday. He was in the second half. He wasn't in the first half. So that's where I'm at when it comes down to Hunter. He could get better. We're talking more Philly special. Yeah, it could have been. Let's see. When it comes down to it. Let's see. Coaching. People talking about Juwan. I'm running through this. Woo. Love my Michigan football, but I'm completely done with Harbaugh. Yeah, well, JT, hey, everybody can have their own opinion. And I think there were at times when it came down with the stuff with the NFL, I can understand that. It's like, come on, man, you're really doing this? I mean, really? So I understand that. But now that it's done, like, would you rather, JT? And you don't have to necessarily go back to Hoke or Rodriguez, but 2 years ago I would have moved on if I was running everything. If I was the athletic director, if they would have said, if Ward Manuel would have called me up during the pandemic and said, Fithian, You watch Michigan and stay as close to it as much as anybody. I'm asking you. We've known each other for a long time. I'm going to let you make the call. I'd have said, Ward, Jim's the ultimate Michigan man, and nobody knows how to beat Ohio State more than him. But at some point, you just got to make the move. Let's make it. Damn, that would have been the wrong move. And then he would have said, well, who are you going to bring in? Which is always the next question. I said, why don't you go ahead and bring in Matt Campbell from Iowa State? Do it, Ward. Make the move. They'd have moved on from Jim Harbaugh. They'd have brought in Matt Campbell. Where would we be sitting right now? And I think that Michigan going to be okay next year. But do I think Sharon Moore, like that would have been my pick for next Michigan coach if Harbaugh would have taken the Broncos job? And they would have been all right, but I think that Harbaugh would have been a better coach than Moore, next year, even though Moore, got full support and everything like that. And then moving forward with all these things going on with the NCAA, not just with Michigan tangled up in the NCAA, however you want to look at that tanglement, with everything. It's a fluid situation, and now Harbaugh is absolutely fighting with the NCAA, telling them, oh yeah, this is what's going on. Recruiting and everything else. He's the guy for the job. So, I mean, if you're tired, I get, like, you can, I'm not disrespecting you, JT, but if you're tired of the winning and the drama, it's just too much. I get it. I'm kind of like, it's not for the faint of heart. Maybe just tune in during the football season, but he's getting the job done right now. There's nobody that could be better for Michigan right now. If there was a replacement, you thought, oh, this guy could even come close. There's nobody even close right now. So I know that's where he's got Michigan, where he's got him, and he's able to do some of the stuff that he has. But, he also deserves a lot of that. I don't know what that is all about. Here's somebody that is talking about Joel Klatt. Is he talking about some controversy? Yeah, look, like there's a lot of stuff going on with Michigan. And, like we've talked about with off the field, I don't need to restate it all again. I think the one thing is, and like we said about like Matt Weiss, even the latest piece with, the cyber crime, I don't have my opinion of Weiss is that it's more of a hope. Hopefully, Weiss was hacking into somebody's email just to kind of check out where things were going or whatever else. And it had nothing to do with the football program in so much where they're not going to be able to come back and say, well, it is affected recruiting. And then the NCAA gets involved. And I know people like, I don't know that. I'm saying I hope that that's not the case. And a lot of people are like, well, it was just the Department of Public Safety. I mean, these guys, they've got authority too. So we got to let that play out. I don't know what it is. So I'll go back to my original statement. I just hope that it's nothing and that they can just move on and just talk about the offensive coordinator. If I wanted to be like, get people up and where you say, well, it could be this, all of that. There's this part where people say, welcome to Michigan, where it gets more clicks and more controversy. Michigan is a big-time school. They're a big-time brand. When it comes down to college football and basketball, and when you put in Harbaugh, there's nothing bigger. So, yeah, the big-time names and the big-time programs, they're the ones that are going to be talked about the most, especially when they're winning. So, yeah, that comes with the territory. Like if you look at the Dallas Cowboys, you think people are taking it easy on the Dallas Cowboys today? Like, hey, they lost the football game. No. When you get the star on the helmet, what comes with that is a lot of attention. When you get that winged helmet, there's a lot of attention that comes with that winged helmet. I count 22. There's a lot of good things about it, but yeah, there's a lot of bad things as well. Yeah, that would have been unfair to have let him go after the COVID season. Yeah, I disagree with that. I mean, they should not have. Obviously, like he's been great since then. He actually almost couldn't be any better, but it was not unfair. It would have actually been completely fair. He was given way more time than anybody. So you couldn't even I don't think you're saying that. I don't think that there's many people that could have said that he wasn't given an opportunity. It was 6 years. That's a long time. You know, sure. Looking back, all right. Martini wants to know about Brian Greasy. Any chatter? Well, the chatter is that Greasy's name has got an up arrow because he's the quarterback coach for Brock Purdy, who hasn't lost a game, and he's Mr. Irrelevant, and so he's getting a lot of shine because of that, and he should. And Michigan has an opening for a quarterback coach and slash offensive coordinator, and he's a Michigan man. The only thing that you would say, not only, but one of the things is that Brian Greasy, after the 2020 season, even though OT is saying that it would have been a bonehead move, that's what Greasy wanted to do. If it was up to Brian Greasy, Jim Harbaugh, they would have moved on from him. He said enough is enough. So I get it. But that might be the reason that they would move on from it. Um, mm, mm, mm. Let's take a few more here. P. Maximus says he thinks basketball is stuck. He doesn't see improvement, no movement. Everybody looking for their shot and then transition back to defense. Yeah, they're not playing their best basketball. Look, I'm not trying to put they've got a long way to go to kind of make it. And yesterday isn't the greatest. A day after watching them yesterday would not be the greatest way to say, oh yeah, they look really good and everything else. So I think that last year at this time was kind of the same thing. Like, man, this thing doesn't look. And then they got better. They made the tournament and they won 2 games. So let's see if they're going to be able to do something similar this year. But yeah, I mean, they are not above criticism. That's for sure. I mean, you can look at them and say, I don't really see it. I get that, but it's not great. Go Blue wants a point guard. Doug McDaniel's a point guard. Like, I get it. That's it. Let's take 2 more here. I think most fair weather fans are expecting a drive-through window for college football head coaches to open on every street corner. Little do they realize a head coach's job at the Big Ten is the absolute pinnacle for coaching talent. All right. My respect for Jim Harbaugh has doubled since he said he was not going to lie about the NCAA charges. Do or die, at least we did the right thing. No, that's actually, I don't know. Like, I guess that's the way you could look at it, Steve. He said he wasn't going to he wasn't going to say anything. He wasn't going to, he may have been lying, but what he said is that he wasn't answering any questions. He said, it's a little flimsy, Steve. He didn't remember what was going on with the NCAA. Michigan made some contact during the COVID period with some recruits when they weren't supposed to. He said he didn't remember. Michigan had a Zoom with their coaches when they weren't supposed to be watching the players. He didn't want to get into that. Michigan was sending some texts when the times that they weren't supposed to. I don't know. He didn't know anything about that, or he didn't remember it. Well, that's what was going on. So I think what he's doing is like, look, there's other teams that are doing worse, and so stick it. We're not doing it as bad as them. It's a strategy. And he's telling the NCAA where they can stick it. You're not doing anything to, like these guys that are doing major things. So screw you. I don't know about that. Being about saying he wasn't going to lie. I don't know. So this is the part. You're talking about Jim Harbaugh telling the truth and lying over these last 24 days. That's not a like. If you want to be positive about Michigan, just I would say not go into any of that because I don't think you're going to like the honest answers about that, like straightforward, honest answers. I think you got to kind of start, you know, not being. You're going to have to. I think you just have to throw yourself to Michigan and kind of buy in if you're really going to want to look for the positive angle on all that stuff. JB has been out grinding. Wish me luck. I'm going to walk on the football team if I go. Let's go, James. I'm with you, man. Best of luck. Get in there. Get to work, man. Stay in touch. But you are right there. You are right there. Ant says, stand your square. We don't have to answer no sneaking questions. We plead the fifth. And that's it, man. We're fans. You're a fan, forget all that. I look at, Michigan football and Jim Harbaugh in particular, and I'm going to say this to all you fans out there. You guys are all whipped. You're Michigan whipped. You're Harbaugh whipped. That's not a bad thing. If you remember your first love and you go back and there's a situation like you're with all your boys. That's a Saturday night. You got the fight ordered up, pay-per-view. You guys got the cards in the air. You got pizza on the way. And you get your text from your girl. You tell your boys, I'm out. And they start questioning you. And you say, look, I'm going to see my girl. And they're giving you a hard time. And then one says, you guys going to watch the fight? And you say, I'm going to watch a Hallmark movie. And then you leave. And they all say, he's whipped. But you don't care. Because you know where you're going and you know what you're going to do. Michigan's got you whipped. So does Harbaugh. I've heard some of the negativity over the last 24 days. Michigan, they only care about beating Ohio State. Michigan, what if they really want? This is over the last 2 years. You think I care about hearing somebody say that you've just beat Ohio State? I would come back at them and say, no, they actually validated that victory by winning the Big Ten and collecting some rings and going to the college football playoff. And if I'm going to be real honest with you, I want Michigan to win a championship. I wanted them to beat TCU. But you know what? If they just beat Ohio State all the time and win the Big Ten all the time, go to the college football championship, the playoffs all the time, I'm going to be really happy, extremely happy. I think it'll be great. So I thought last year just winning, for the first time in so long, it was great. But backing it up and doing it again on the road in the manner that they did, only allowing Ohio State 3 points, man, that could take me on cloud nine and take me right into next season. And if it wasn't for all this news that Michigan has had over the last 24 days, that's more of where my focus would be. I'd be talking about next year. I'd be talking about dominating Ohio State. I'd be talking about how great this team looks and everything on paper. But, they've got all these other things that are flying around that are, affecting it. But they're pretty good. And ask yourself the question when you wake up, how you're feeling about Michigan. And JT, you're not feeling really good. But you know what? Just think about these last 2 years and think about next year. It's pretty good. You're in a real good spot. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching today. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Don't forget, subscribe to the show. Leave a review if you're somebody that listens to the podcast. Rate it. I really hope that you would do those things so we can continue doing this every day. Until tomorrow, I want everybody to have a great day. Thanks for all my well wishes about our GOAT. until you didn't know you could love. I was gonna say, they're not like a pet, like a dog or something. They're the wild animal. But we're hoping that she's back. Okay, take care, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.